Everyone, it's Debbie Potts, and I am going to talk to Natalie Grasso today. We met on the low carb cruise earlier this year, and we're both at KetoCon, and we just keep trying to schedule a podcast. And finally, we're meeting today, and I wanted to talk to you kind of what she shared on the low carb cruise. I think it's important for athletes because we're competitive, driven, ambitious athletes that we are sometimes hard on ourselves. So Natalie's story, we're going to talk a little bit about, but how she transformed her mind, body, and whole life, ending a toxic relationship and embarking on a healing journey, and how she changed her nutrition and just mindset. I think a lot of it. And I know that a lot of us are racing for a reason. And I obviously had to stop doing triathlons in 2013, tried again in 2015. And I'm finally going to try shorter distance races next year. And I have to get a bike because my Sorello bike, it's ancient looking. And even though it's not about the bike, it's about how you train. So I find that we are racing for a reason. A lot of times I know people that still do Ironmans, have been doing for 20 years. It's more like, what is your why? What drives you? What are you running from? What are you running to? What's your why? Like my friend does these Ultramans and does these 600-mile bike rides. Why do you do that? I have a friend that I swim with, and she's done Ironmans, and she's always training year round for an Ironman. And I was like that too. It just gets to be our normal life schedule. And I think until you step away, as I did from Ironmans for a few years, and I'm kind of stepping back into that world because I love the community and my friends in there for 20 years. But you really realize how much other stuff there is to do when you don't have a race to train for all the time. So that's all I used to do was swim, bike, run, and training. And I wouldn't go on vacation unless it was around a race. And when I quit doing Ironmans because of health issues, I actually went to Europe, and then we started going every other year to Europe, and then maybe did some back-to-back trips. And it got to be really nice not to have to worry about missing my bike ride and missing that key swim session. You can run anywhere, but to bike and swim is a little harder. So I think finding a healthy relationship to what drives us and why we train, why we race, also your relationship with food. Maybe some people have addictive personalities, and we choose training for a 50K race, an ultra bike ride, an Ironman, whatever it is, endurance events. Maybe we look at what motivates us to do it. Or people that I know stop racing, but then they're going back to do an Ironman with barely training just because, I don't know, fear of missing out. What is it? You tell me. So I know we'll talk to Natalie. She does not do Ironmans and triathlons. We'll get a different insight. But let's bring on and talk about story and talk about how you can be the CEO of your own health.
Cool.
All right, guys, I am in the sunshine, so you kind of can see me, but you can see Natalie, who you really want to see because she's so cute and she's got good hair.
I just washed it for you, Debbie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So
Doesn't
nice.
happen very often.
So Natalie and I met on the low carb cruise last May, and you're going again, aren't you? I saw you were.
Yes, I cannot wait. So excited.
Yeah. So we just had a good time chatting on the cruise, and you guys still can go on the cruise. There's I think there's room. I think 250 plus people already registered for next year because Dr. Ken Berry is in charge of the conference. If you want a conference on the cruise, we have conference session during the at sea days, and then we're at port. We are cruising around having fun. And then every night we shared the same dinner table last year, but we have a good time hanging out at dinner each night with our group, and then we chat. Usually last year we didn't as much, but hang out on the cruise ship and outside walks, and good time to connect with your community. So that was a good plug for low carb cruise. Talk to Debbie Hubs. But today, Natalie, we're going to talk about how to be your CEO of your health. And I want to really dive into the mindset. And, this is an endurance athlete, 40, I don't know how old everyone is, 40 to 60 something year olds, that I find a lot of people race a lot, and always looking at what's your why, what drives us. If it's, I don't want to get fat, I'm afraid of what I'm going to look like. My body composition changes if I don't race. And so I'm overtraining all the time. But fill in the blank, I think it's great to dive into what's our why, what drives us, what are we running to, what are we running from? And there's so much more to go into. But let's talk about what you do. You do coaching, but bodybuilding, and you're the bikini babe, bodybuilder, hot chick on Instagram. So talk about your story.
Sure. Yeah. So I am a pro bodybuilder, started in bikini, switched over to wellness, which is a new category.
I was going to say, I've never heard of wellness bodybuilding.
Yeah, right? It's kind of interesting.
Ironic.
A little bit of an oxymoron. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just teaching some master classes about how to know if competing is right for you. Because a lot of women are kind of playing with the idea of doing a bodybuilding competition for the first time. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions come up, and there's a lot of things to consider, because really what I was sharing on those master classes is that it's not a healthy hobby. It is to a point, and then it's not. And for many of us, I'm sure a lot of your listeners as well, we started in a not a very healthy place. And to an extent, getting into our fitness journey made us healthier, but it can also have a dark side. We'll definitely talk about that. My story definitely includes that as well. I started out chronically ill in my mid 20s. Shouldn't be that ill at that age, right? I should have been at the pinnacle of health. And I grew up in a Greek and Italian home. We ate Mediterranean.
Good food.
We ate really good food, homemade food. We didn't do a lot of crap. So, I found myself in my mid 20s, and it's a lot of the things women struggle with today. It was a lot of cycle issues with my menstrual cycles that started from the time I first started my cycle. I'd been on birth control for 20 years, by the time I started my health journey. And that was one of the things I eventually was able to phase out and get off of, thank goodness. Because that was, I'm sure, all of these things kind of played in together, but GERD, acid reflux, terrible GI issues from the time I was a teenager all the way through my 20s, had stomach ulcers in my mid 20s, chronic migraines, chronic sinus infections, absolutely excruciating periods that took me out of work. I had, my gosh, there was so much that I was on all of these antidepressants that were not prescribed for depression. They were prescribed for other things, including GI issues. And I was never told anything about my diet from my doctors, just nothing about changing my lifestyle at all. And I was a dancer growing up. So I went to college for dance. I was dancing a lot. And when I got into the corporate world, I worked in nonprofit management for 15 years. So I was sitting in a desk, for the first few years. It was a very stressful environment. I was in a sales role, and 25 years old, I got a mortgage. I was in a terrible relationship, toxic relationship. I was being cheated on. It was just like all of this stuff converging, and I was a total mess health wise. My mental health was a mess. Never should have been there, at that age. But many, many people find themselves in that same place. You're in this rat race, you're on this hamster wheel, total stress out the wazoo, nothing but stress, working long hours, and no real meaning in life, and slowing down. And it wasn't until that relationship was on the brakes, it was just so bad that I had to end it. And I've always been a spiritual person. So it was like this, something was put on my heart, like, you've got to go, you've got to go. And so when I cut that out, it was like heartbreak, depression. Who am I even now? Because I've been with this person all this time. And it became a part of my identity. And, in your mid 20s too, you're also just trying to figure out who you are and how you want to show up in the world. And, I hadn't really made anything for myself in my career yet either. So it was just this really dark time. And at the same time, the beauty came out of the darkness, because it many times they say you don't look up until you're down, you
Mhm.
know, and it brought me to my knees, and it was just like, it started with a spiritual reawakening. I went on a retreat. I connected with my faith and connected with myself again. I started doing, reading all these books about dating yourself and,
Mhm.
self-love and journaling and all of this. So it was really on a journey of self-discovery that took me through the health improvements as well. I started caring. I started considering my value, and that my value did not come from external validation,
Mhm.
and that I was loved and deeply loved, and that I loved myself, and that if I love myself, I have to treat myself well,
Yeah.
and that treating myself well meant feeding myself well, nourishing myself well, moving in ways that made me feel good. So it was no longer this lifelong battle, which many, many girls from a very young age have been on, of needing to be in a smaller body and always trying to lose weight and always going on these diets. And oh my goodness, I tried everything from the master cleanse, lemonade diet. I mean, everything you can think of. And it was no longer about trying to force my body to change. It came from a place of putting good things into my body.
Mhm.
And then it was just, I called it at the time, the weight loss was a happy side effect.
Yeah.
I was never obese. I was never 200 plus pounds. I'm very small, petite. I'm 5 feet, barely 5 feet tall.
I know I tower
Nobody
over
knows
you.
when we stand next to each other. Hilarious. So at my heaviest, I don't even like to say my weight because people are like, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
not."
yeah. They make
But
fun.
my body composition was not what it is now. So at what sounds like a low weight for a lot of people on my very tiny frame, it was not distributed well. My clothes didn't fit well. It was just uncomfortable to live in. But bigger were all of the gut issues, digestion issues, just the fact that after a meal, I could not be social. I couldn't enjoy my life. It was impacting my relationships, my social life, the way I felt about myself. And so when I started changing what I put in my body, changed the way I felt. And all of a sudden, I could not believe how good I felt in my body. I didn't know that it was possible to live without pain. Chronic back pain. I had all of these aches and pains. I'd been going to the chiropractor since I was in ballet in college. It was just like all of this stuff just seemed to miraculously go away. And it was really through eventually finding the paleo diet. It started just with cutting junk food out and then getting cleaner and then learning a little bit about nutrition, learning about this paleo thing, learning about at the time gluten insensitivity was becoming more well known. I started cutting out dairy. That was the first thing I cut out. And just these simple things people started noticing on the outside, and even my mood improvements, my
Yeah.
skin improvements, everything from the mental health to the physical health. And so that was the initial transformation. And then I got into bodybuilding much later after, 5 years of living this life that I never thought I could have.
Well,
So
it's like food is medicine. And we always talk about that. We're both nutritional therapy practitioners and looking at what I always talk about chronic stress impacts everything. So if you don't get clean out your external stressors and these toxic energy robbers, it's really hard to heal. And those people are struggling with fat loss, is my focus area is fat loss, performance, and longevity. That a lot of times if people are trying to do all these different things and not getting the desired results, it's often look at like what's your why, look at that, kind of find yourself as you did and explore and go deep, journal, and whatever you need to do to kind of find out how to love yourself first and what drives you. Because I think so many people I find are people pleasers. They're not thinking of
oh my
themselves.
gosh.
They're
Yes.
helping everybody else, especially moms,
Moms.
and they're not taking care of themselves. They're very last on the list. So I get these people with constant stress, and their external stressors are part of or a result of the combination of internal hidden stressors, like you're talking about the microbiome, digestion, and all that inflammation in your body. But it's so fascinating. Sometimes we need to maybe start with cleaning up your pantry, but clean up your life. get
Ah,
rid of the toxic energy around
okay.
you that might be in your pantry, your freezer, and in your daily life.
There's a new program. There's a new program. Clean out your pantry, clean out your life.
Oh, I'm gonna write that down. Note to self, clean it out. But I keep finding clients that are, they're struggling, and it's just so common. Is why I wanted to do this show since we talked on the cruise ship. It's just like athlete of any level. We have a drive to do races. If it's bodybuilding, if it's an Ironman, if it's a 5K race, it's, reaching that finish line and feeling good about yourself. But what gets us there, what drives us psychologically is part of it. But then it's like, what are we trying to solve? Maybe we keep filling in all this stuff with things to do or different addictions, but we're
Yeah.
not dealing with, all right, I'm not happy. I always say I moved to San Diego from Seattle and left this crazy life that I just finally went back after 2.5 years last week and realized, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was so unhappy until I moved here, and look at my view. I
Oh,
found I'm smiling every day. I have this huge stress relief. So anyways, I just think that toxicity, it comes in all different forms, is something you need to look at as an individual if you're struggling with fat loss, performance gains, and just general health issues.
yes, 100%. You are like ticking off all my bells here. When we were on the cruise, I was sharing my story through a bulimia relapse in 2020, and this was after 18 years because I was bulimic in my preteen years, and through junior year of college, and then kind of quit cold turkey, and got into my life and just moved on, and then but these things that are unchecked within us, right? My bulimia was not a food issue.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even a body image issue. It was about things internally that I was not facing. And so when the ish hit the fan back in 2020 and my world came crashing down around me, I didn't deal with the emotions that were coming up, stuffing them down with food, which, whether it's a full blown diagnosed eating disorder or not, many people are turning to food to cope.
Yeah.
Turning to food, they call it emotional eating. And something I shared on the cruise is there's no such thing as emotional eating. There is eating to avoid your emotions.
Yeah.
And
There you
so,
go.
what we're actually doing is distracting ourselves from dealing
Mm-hmm.
with the real issues when we're turning to food. And so, when we can lean into the pain of the discomfort, of the uncomfortable feelings that we don't want to feel, and there's something to discover there about ourselves that we were
Mm-hmm.
running from with food. And what many athletes do is run from those things with their sport.
Yeah.
So the sport can also become a vice.
Well,
So, and that's what happened to me too. It was 2020. I was trying to compete at a pro level because I'd gone pro in 2019. And so I had all these delusions of grandeur, and then everything shut down. And then it was, what am I without my sport?
yeah.
Right? I don't have a show on the calendar. Then who
Yeah.
am I? What does that mean about me?
Oh, wow. I haven't thought about, I had this, I didn't really talk about my whole story on the cruise ship, but I stopped doing Ironmans because I had to, because adrenal exhaustion, whatever you want to call it, in March 2013, almost 10 years ago. And ironically, last week, I just said I went back to Bellevue, Washington. I haven't been there really 2.5 years. I closed my fitness studio, and for 10 years, 3 years ago, October 1st, 2018. And coming here, San Diego, no one knows me. And you go back home, and everyone knows me at the club. I've been there since I was, a kid, and I won races, and I had a history, and people knew me for the triathlete. I did Ironmans. And so I was known for that. It's like always, when's your next race? Every day, literally every day, at least once, someone would ask me that. So I had this identity as a triathlete and a marathoner. Someone was always doing a race, and I did well at it. But then I lost that identity, I don't know, 5 years ago, when I couldn't get myself together to run fast again, to do an Ironman. My body was like burnt out and broken. And so I think that's such a good point you make, that we lose that identity. It's like when professional athletes retire,
Oh
Tom
yeah.
Brady is on the news right now. Like Tom Brady, his wife Giselle is getting upset because he should have stuck with retirement, been a dad and been around for weddings and all this stuff. That I think we have to look at for any sport we do are what distractions. Like so many people I know still do races. I said this in the intro that it's like, okay, do you not know what to do with yourself if I'm not filling in my day with workout after workout and having all this stuff because I have something to do with myself. And I think it's just like, okay, that's just my life. I'm programmed that way to swim at lunchtime. I do something in the morning. I long bike on Saturday, Sunday long run. And so I think bodybuilding too, you take up a lot of time. So if you have a show, it's the same to me as a race. I have Ironman on December 7th. And so you have a date to focus on getting ready. So when that's over, people get this post-race depression, like, okay, now
Yes.
what? So I
Yes.
think
The
it's
post
similar.
show. Yes, I was just giving tips on like when you're hiring a coach for a bodybuilding competition. So a prep coach, and you're getting into prep. The most important time of your entire prep is the post show.
Hmm.
And to hire a coach and to think you're going to step off that stage and you're done with your coach is the worst decision you can make for yourself, because you are leaving yourself with no support at the time that you are going to be the most vulnerable. The
Mm-hmm.
4 weeks after a show is the lowest time of a
Mm-hmm.
competitor's life, and you need every support system that you can have in place for that time. You're going to be The body dysmorphia is very real in bodybuilding, and it's similar to, yeah, you come
I
off
think
the top of
Ironman, same
the
thing. You get a
yeah,
certain look and you don't want to lose it.
you don't want to lose it, right?
No,
And then it's
you can't
healthy
keep it
and
up.
required to put on body fat after a show. You should not, as a bodybuilder, live stage lean. Nobody
Yeah.
does. It's really not sustainable.
That's exactly the same race weight for race an Ironman
Yep,
marathon. You know, you're at race weight.
wrestler.
You can't sustain that. It's not healthy, which is probably why all my hormones went down to the bottom of the barrel.
Absolutely. We talked about that a lot on the cruise because I've been there too with the adrenal fatigue. And it takes a long time to overcome that. I
Mm-hmm.
took 2 years between, I haven't been on stage in 2 years. It was right at the end of 2020 when I was still in the height of my bulimia and decided the only way I can get out of this is actually to put a show on the calendar. Because what athletes know is when I have a date on the calendar, I'm going to do what it takes.
Yeah.
I knew that I had to stop the binging and purging if I'm going to have a show. And I knew I could nail my macros perfectly and hit the stage as I needed to, but I was petrified about what was going to happen after. So I put everything in place to have the right people, the right professionals around me so that I would have the support that I needed to start my recovery, because I knew as soon as I stepped off that stage, recovery had to start. And so I took a full year just in recovery, not thinking about competing, got to my heaviest weight that I'd ever been, even before my original
And
transformation.
that's probably normal weight.
And it was healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, really, especially after the years that I put in building muscle, my body composition was not what it was 10 years ago when I weighed that. So now this time when I weighed it, it was a healthy, size, but also it was a little bit more than really was healthy. But I went into, and this is another piece of the message, is I started listening to too many voices.
Mm.
And unfortunately, another woman you might have, I'm sure you're connected to, is Michelle Hearn, Dietitian's Dilemma.
Yeah. She's on the show.
Love her. Oh my gosh. Finally got to meet her at KetoCon. And this woman just is the poster child for what I believe we really need to see changes in the recovery practices for eating disorders,
Mm.
because it's just force feeding garbage food into people, just to
Yeah.
force weight gain. And it's really not about what it needs to be about, which is the mental and self-love and the learning to soothe without food and all of those things. And really it could be supported much better by a um, low carb animal based protocol. Unfortunately, it's you have
Yeah.
to eat cookies. And so I listened to a lot of that recovery, the traditional paradigms of recovery, and for 6 months or so just let myself eat what I wanted to, and I got unhealthy again in a very short period of time. And that is something I've noticed over the years, is if I go back to standard American diet, even for a short period of time, it doesn't take long for all of those chronic issues to start rearing their ugly heads again. You know, the GERD, the GI distress, the gastrointestinal problems, the mental health, because I went into a depression. And I'll tell you what, it was not even 8 weeks. I worked with a naturopath, cleaned up the diet again, got some support from supplementation, and it was night and day. It was like the lights came on in my
Mhm.
brain again. I could think clearly. I could see myself differently. So even all of these things that we don't think are connected to food, like our self-esteem and the way that we see ourselves, all of that, those they're all brain pathways,
Yeah.
and they're being controlled by the foods we're putting in our body.
So do you find that you have spent time working on you enough that you don't, are you always, I guess, like it's any addiction, we're always addicted. It's just in remission or recovery that you have to always watch out for those red flags. And if you got to know for you as an individual, this will flip my switch or this will set me back, and that I have to be careful because I think bodybuilding, as you said, is so strict and you measure your food and do all that stuff. To me, that would set me up for eating disorder and have this poor relationship with food whenever I have to focus it. So you obviously have learned about yourself how to deal with, okay, why am I doing this? What's my distraction? What do I need to focus on to not have that poor relationship with food that will set me off?
Absolutely, absolutely. My recovery journey included a lot of the inner work. So, I went on retreats. I did, I got deep into inner child healing. I did all of it,
Mhm.
right? And ultimately the takeaway from all of it is very, very simple. Self-connection.
Yes.
I noticed, and I had a binge just a few weeks ago. I've been working with a new coach this year who's been amazing, the kind of person that I can go to and tell anything. And so when we first started working together, I said, okay, I am attempting to make a comeback to the stage this year after recovery. And I am not willing to risk my recovery for a stage. So he's on the same page with me. It is
Good.
about me, it is not about the stage. I always said I'll keep it 100% and tell you if I'm getting urges, if I have a binge, whatever's happening. And my number one rule line in the sand is purging is never an option. And
Mhm.
whether that means vomiting or over exercising or under eating or anything to try to fix, that is off the table.
You have to deal with it.
Have to deal with
Yeah.
it. Yep. Deal with the consequences. You made the decision, right?
Yeah.
So the binges have been fewer and fewer and farther between.
You see any patterns though? Like just, I think it's
Yeah.
just
So
inspiration for other people because I think you see patterns when I'm working with clients too. It's like, okay, this happened. What was this connected to, and correlate things together?
exactly. And I call it doing a post-mortem.
Yeah.
If you can't get ahead of it, as I always like to say, you want to try to get ahead of it first and not let it happen. But after the fact, if it did happen, we have to do a postmortem and analyze. And so and my last binge just seemed to come out of nowhere. So I was like, what in the world? What was the trigger? Yeah, I have no
Mhm.
idea. And so I took a few days and I took more time in meditation, um, and just reflected and let things come up. And really, it was the simplest, smallest thing. And this is what I said on the cruise is we have to be ever vigilant for the rest of our lives. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, you just don't get a pass. You don't get let off the hook. You have to be vigilant because when you think you've got it all figured out is when it will come and sweep the rug out from under you, which is what happened to me in 2020. So it was the simple feeling of pressure, financial pressure of being an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
right?
Really?
So for many years as a coach, I got to do that as a hobby. I
Yeah.
had a full-time career. It was a hobby. I barely did it at all. I could do it when I felt like it. And then I left, and 2020 was when it was all on me. And that was a big part of what led me down that road. And and this has been my most successful year to date as a coach. And I've had a good run. And there were these emotions that I was not allowing to come up. My meditation practice had taken a back seat. I was busy. It's like I have all these clients, I have all these people and waking up in the morning and I'm thinking about what do I need to do today and jumping into the to-do list. And the number one thing that I learned through this entire process was that self-connection has to come
Yeah.
first, not last in my day. It can't be the before bed I'm going to meditate. No. If I don't connect with me before I get into the day and connect to my power source, I have no power.
Yep.
There is no energy. I cannot serve. My cup is empty. And
Mm.
I realized, oh my goodness, it has been weeks since I've done my what used to be my normal morning practice.
So you lost connection with yourself because you got too busy and you forgot about connecting with Natalie
And
and
now I'm
having,
operating in that stress
yeah,
mode again, right? Getting
yeah,
right into
the
sympathetic,
rushing woman, busy woman.
never being in that parasympathetic state and allowing myself to just be. And really, that was the thing that was the healing, the biggest healing thing for me in this relapse recovery was learning to be with myself and not taking action. And
Mm.
in that, not having judgment over not taking action.
I think I just did yoga yesterday and they had a quote in there that was just like, oh, I know what it was, holding a pose, and it's just not to think about it, just be and feel it. And something like that. I was like, I got to write that down, but just how stop over analyzing and just be present and just feel that emotion. What do you feel?
Getting
And
out of your head and into
yeah,
your
getting out
body.
of your head. Exactly.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people don't know how to do that. I mean, maybe they do as athletes. I do that on a bike ride and a run. That's what we do to get out of our head and think things through. That's kind of our therapy session. But again, it's always, why do we fill our day up with so much stuff? Like every hour of the day, my past life was always booked from like wake up at 4:30 and I get home at 8 o'clock at night and there was no openings there. So if you screwed around with my schedule that day, I'd be like, no. So I think it's, we get that addicted to busyness that we don't know what to do with ourselves if we have a moment of free time.
Yes,
Like,
and then when we
what?
do have if we do ever get a moment of free time, we feel like there's something wrong with us
You
for
feel
having.
lazy and I
Yeah,
feel unproductive
all
and I
this
feel like a
self-judgment is running
failure.
in the background.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and that
Mm.
self-judgment is exhausting. It's emotionally exhausting, and now we're wondering, and I don't know about for you, but when I was going through my adrenal fatigue, I realized, like, I remember thinking, like, "How am I so exhausted? I'm not even doing an ounce of what I used to do, and I'm
Yeah.
still, like, just exhausted." And then
Worry.
I realized, like, well, because 'cause you're not actually resting, you're just judging yourself for resting, and you're exhausting yourself emotionally, so you're not even allowing yourself to truly rest.
Yeah. I think it's, like you said earlier about running your own business. It is super challenging. I know this week, it's just like, I'm not, people follow me on social media. I'm not a marketing person. I do not like doing those videos you do all the time. I can't stand doing them. To me, it's a stress. And after running my own fitness studio, trying everything for 10 years, like we were doing biohacking health fairs, I was doing self-care health fair. I was doing fat testing and all this stuff that no one knew about, sugar detox, coconut oil, no one knew what I was talking about. So I was way too early on fasting and my
You
detox
wasted
stuff.
your time.
I know. I was like always just trying this and that. And it was just constant stress trying to recreate myself all the time as a business owner. But since I closed my studio October 2018, I've been just on my own coaching. And then again, like, I don't want to work in a business. I don't want to work for someone, but it is, when you're running your own business, it is a lot of work. We're passionate. You're following your purpose. You have a mission, but it's work. And, it is exhausting and you have to always be hustling. And I don't like doing that part.
And
So
you have to
it's
build
work.
it in,
Yeah.
this was a eye opener and a wake up call for me that, yeah, you know what? I have to build in time for me. The part
Mhm.
of the reason why the biggest reason why I wanted to shift into health and fitness, besides the fact that I was passionate about it, was that I wanted to be able to control my own time.
Yeah.
So if I'm the one setting my schedule and I'm overbooking myself, And I'm not giving myself periods of rest in between calls and in between appointments and all of the other work that needs to be done, right? Because we're, as a solopreneur without a team, I'm doing it all, right? So if I'm not building that time in for me, I'm
Yeah.
doing to myself what my employers used to do to me. It's just the same as it would be to work for someone else.
Yeah. And I think as for everyone kind of goes into stress is setting boundaries up. So whatever job you have, if you have family, kids, you're cooking the meals, you're doing the laundry, you're running errands, you're trying to fit in all these workouts each day, do your self-care, do your yoga, trying to do it all, but finding the right balance so you're not doing too much of everything. And I've talked a lot about this in podcasts, people getting into the biohacking that they're doing the cold sauna, they're doing the cold therapy, then the sauna, and then they're doing meditation, and then they're doing this. And then there's like, a huge list of stuff for the ideal day, and then you have to work and eat and do all this is overwhelming. So
It
I
defeats
would
the
set
purpose if
boundaries,
you're creating more, if you're
more
if you're doing
stress.
it all, you're just creating more, right? You're just
Yeah.
going to detract from the benefits of any of those things.
And that's what I've said since all this stuff, there's got to be such hype of cold baths, cold plunge, cold therapy, cryotherapy. It is beneficial. But if I'm doing something of anything too much, it's not a beneficial stress. It's a hormetic stress, acute stress, small dose, recover, repair, rebuild, and get stronger. But everything we do, all these kind of workouts, biohacking, whatever it might be, we can't tend to get so obsessed with everything and do everything too much. So I would say it's a Goldilocks effect for everything, finding that right amount to create the positive dose to get the positive response. But instead, we're just adding more stress to our bucket, and our beaker of stress is just overfilling and getting more so. So I think what I was getting to before I rambled there is setting boundaries of, I'm big fan of unplugging 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I'm in bed by 8 usually. Unplug the phone, put it in airplane mode, turn it off, keep it out of your room. I think we're so on our phones and emails and text, social media. Like my eyesight is going bad. I have to wear glasses. I cannot see anything because I've got computer screen and then I'm on my phone. And so I think setting boundaries of, like I just use Instagram on my phone, which I was going to even delete, and just use Facebook on my computer. And I don't have any tweets. I don't have any noises on my phone. Everything's shut off. And I'm really a fan when I'm working with clients, like talk about detoxifying, clutter in your life and to self-care. To me, it's almost get rid of all these, I don't know what they are. They're just stressors to me. There's just too many sounds
Yeah,
and
all of these
alerts.
notifications all the
Yeah,
time, pulling
notifications.
your pulling your attention in too many directions. And we know it takes, I forget how many seconds or minutes they say it takes to actually focus on something once you've been distracted from it.
Yeah,
So we don't
squirrel.
realize how much time we actually lose just trying to refocus when we're constantly being pinged on a device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that's a lot of, stress is just doing too much and being too busy, and we get disconnected with our own selves because we're always on. And I watch people work out in the gym when I go in the morning. I'm like, get off your phone. People are sitting on the machines, which I'm finding machines are really wasted time. People sit there
Oh
with their
gosh.
coffee in one hand,
Yep.
their cell phone in the other hand. I'm like, is that a workout? They're pushing the leg press with just like
Definitely not an optimized workout, that's for
ugh,
sure.
distractions. So anyways, I think it's, the goal of the conversation is talk about how to optimize your health, your fat loss, health, and performance. And I think part of it is what you're saying is, finding yourself, self-love. I would say self-care is self-love, loving yourself enough to prioritize self-care. And for you is that morning ritual is key. And if you don't do that morning routine, that will set you off and not keep you on your positive mindset and keep yourself on track to have success for that day.
Absolutely. And it's a simple one. I don't have a laundry list of things that need to be done, the meditation and the journaling and this and that. It's kind of all rolled into one. It's whatever I need that day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I've set aside this time to say the first thing I do in my day is be with myself. So some days things come up that I want to get on the page and I'm journaling. Other days
Yeah.
it's just I use the Breathe app on my Apple Watch, and it's a nice little pulse so it can kind of guide my breathing.
Mm.
You can set a number of minutes that you want to do it. I put on some meditation music. So I'm using my devices for good things.
So when you do that though, do you turn off everything else so that you don't have distractions when you're in meditation?
It's funny, I don't, but I don't also,
Do you
I
ignore
don't know,
it?
maybe I have it always off.
Because I know I've heard some people, Ben Greenfield had a podcast with someone once, and they're talking about these devices that you can save your old iPhone and use that for just on Wi-Fi. So when you're doing the meditation apps, you save that. So I kept my old phone. And so if I did an app, because I get distracted too easily, I just have to shut everything off. And even if I do yoga on my iPad, and if there's like something comes on there, whatever, I'm like, wait, I lost my
Yeah,
focus on my yoga
I
class.
didn't get a lot of pinging. Maybe it's just the time of day, but because I get more of that in the afternoon. And I set my schedule so that, usually I'm not getting a lot of messages or anything at that time.
Mhm.
But that's something to think about now I'm going to be more aware of. I think you just helped me up level because I now I'm going to be more aware if I notice that I'm being distracted because maybe I have been and I haven't even noticed it.
That's a good thing though. I mean, maybe, but it's a good thing that you ignore those things, that you're such in the zone, the Zen state, that you're not getting distracted by squirrels,
Yeah,
just
and a big part of it was erasing this we're taught that meditation means absence of thought and that you can't have thoughts and you have to ignore all your thoughts, and that's not how it works for me. For me, it's what needs to come up.
Mhm.
And I do a simple body scan if nothing's already coming up, because a lot of the time I'm already present to something's bubbling, and so I just sit with it and I allow it to come up however it wants to come up. And like I said, sometimes I want to get it out on the paper. Sometimes I just want to breathe through it. Sometimes I use affirmations, but it's not prescribed. And this is kind of the connection to my mission, which is to teach women to be the CEOs of their body, and really everyone to be the CEO of your body and your journey. And that being not to shop out things to other people. Like, I need to do this way because this is how this biohacker said it has to be done, or this is how this guru
Yeah.
says you should do keto. So I need to be doing keto this way. And, just all of these, I see the biggest thing that I see in this space is, and I work primarily with women, so it's mostly with women, but this insecurity in your own ability to make your own decisions and to apply the knowledge that you learn to yourself in a way that works for you. There's this shopping it out. Like, I just need somebody else to tell me. And at the end of the day, nobody will ever know you and your body better than you do. So the better thing to do is to tune into yourself and your own body and learn your own body's signals so that you can take all these voices and all these opinions and you can distill it down into something that is going to work for you. And then how to maybe apply some trial and error, maybe apply some experimentation, experimentation in a way that you know how to assess whether or not this is working for you. But the number one thing that I see is just this insecurity and this shopping it out. So I don't have like this is the routine and it has to be this way. It's very fluid and it's whatever comes up. So if I do have a thought and it's carrying me somewhere, I follow the thought instead of trying to ignore the thought.
Mhm. So with that, just kind of wrap it up our last little bit. Tips on why people struggle with fat loss, we're saying, is more the mindset and creating more of that positive relationship. As I say, why we're eating. It's all, I always talk about the what we're eating, how, when, but the why. And, you working on creating that positive relationships with food so we don't have, I think, a binge, but also I think fasting to me years, I don't know, it's before I closed my fitness studio and fasting was growing a lot. And I found it troublesome to me because a lot of people that had addictive personalities were now doing another addictive thing that was an eating disorder to me, is avoiding food at
Yes.
all. And when they had time to eat, they didn't know what to eat. So it was like, are you running from not having comfort, your relationship with food, to eat nourishing food for your body instead of seeing food as an enemy? and that means binge, or if it's over exercise and, eat crap, but it's fasting with just the opposite thing of just work out more or don't eat for a
Yes.
3-day
Yeah.
fast. And I think it's that relationship with food. So the question would be, is that, your tips for struggling with fat loss? What would be, top 3
Yeah.
tips?
Okay. Top 3 tips, like quick. We have practical things, especially I see it with women, not eating enough for your body's needs, particularly not eating enough protein, not embracing weight training to change your body composition, making it
Yes.
always about getting smaller and seeing the weight on the scale go down versus what will actually improve your health and your longevity and your metabolic health, putting on muscle. So women being afraid to get bulky. And then this same thing is what leads into number 2, which is living in a restrict and binge cycle. And so the number one thing I hear my ladies say to me, if I had $1 for every client who said this, I am an all or nothing person. So
Yep.
this black and white thinking, this catastrophizing, this if I'm off, I'm all the way off. If I'm on, I'm perfect.
That's not females only. I have a lot of male
Yeah,
clients and I hear the
yeah,
same
the
thing.
seeking of
It's just,
perfection.
yeah.
And then as soon as something's not perfect, that's excuse to go off the rails. And
Mm.
so, and or the then trying
Mm.
to fix it with fasting, over exercising. These are, make no mistake about it, these are purge behaviors.
Yep.
So it is leading to disordered eating. It's disordered eating for sure, and it's leading toward a full blown eating disorder if you don't get that in check. And then finally, the not connecting with yourself is the third thing that I would say. So eat more real food, protein,
Protein.
food, lift weights, put some muscle on your body. Um, Let go of the black and white thinking. If you need to work with a cognitive behavioral therapist or coaches, we work. I'm sure you work with your clients on that. I work with my clients on
I
that.
think I'm half therapist, half nutrition therapist
Absolutely.
and coach. It's like just, people just need someone to listen to and let things out. And I think, it's part of being a coach to help people lose weight is being a listener and helping them with their workouts and their nutrition and just healthy lifestyle habits. But that goes with having someone that can trust and just do a mind dump to them. That's your toxic energy release right there. Go for it. I'm just there for them. So yeah, I think that's just part of being a good coach.
And what's interesting, as we do our check-ins with clients and they're doing their review of their week or, whenever they do their check-ins, I hear the profound thing for them is a lot of the time before we ever get on our call, just the written check-ins are very eye-opening for them. And it's because how often do we as individuals sit down and review our lives, review our day, review our week, and say, hey, what did I do good this week? What can I celebrate myself for? What do I
Yeah.
need to improve upon? And really analyze our lives and the way we're going about our lives. We don't do that. So
Mhm.
when clients do that with their coach, they get a lot of self-knowledge just from that process.
Mhm.
And then talking through it just takes it to another level.
Yeah, that's true. Very good. Well, it's a totally different topic than we've been talking about. Train low, race high, carb timing, no carbs, carnivore, all of that. So this was a flipping the topics to talk about more mindset because it doesn't matter what you do for nutrition and your exercise. Sometimes you need to work on this mental part first. And I just
All
did a little,
there. It's
yeah, I
really
just
hard.
recorded a little solo podcast this morning saying, to be fat adapted, this whole process to go keto, carnivore, whatever, wherever you are, but you need to work on, prepping first and just try to getting everything working in order. But I think a lot of it is up in the head first that you need to work on. So I appreciate your being open and talking and sharing and being authentic. I think that's what we need to do as coaches. And if people have said that to me, it's like, isn't that normal? But I guess it's not. People are authentic out there and just
Absolutely.
be
And
real.
I think that we're perfect and we're not perfect. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing if we hadn't gone through things and still
Exactly.
continue to go through things and then recover from them. The
Hmm.
key in this whole game is making that recovery period shorter and shorter and shorter. If you do fall off the wagon, how quickly can you recover and get right back to where you need to be?
Yeah. And I think
Partnering with yourself and with your body is the way to make that happen.
good. And then where can people learn more with you and your programs?
So now on most of the platforms, Instagram is probably the largest. That is my at the Keto Bikini Pro. Facebook, Natalie Grasso, my name, but also I have a group, Keto Bikini Secrets, where I go live every Monday night with a new masterclass topic on fitness, keto, carnivore, low carb, nutrition, and mindset. And then I also have a YouTube channel now, Keto Bikini Secrets there as well. So you can find me there.
Good deal. Well, thank you so much. And we'll put all the links in the show notes, and anything I forgot to send my way, and we'll share it away.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It was great to reconnect.